Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We are here today to talk about Chapter 2, The Tribes of Tatooine. Of course, we're talking about the Book of Boba Fett. We're 2 weeks into it right now, and we had a pretty good turnout last week. We had a really good conversation. People were throwing theories out there, scenes that they liked, and we encourage you to do it again for this episode because things are moving. We're getting a lot more history with Boba Fett, and things are very interesting, funny, head-scratching, all of the above, which is part and parcel when it comes to Star Wars, let's be honest, nowadays. This is going to be a spoiler-filled discussion, so if you haven't seen the episode, watch it first and obviously come back. I think everyone knows the name of the game now. Like, everyone's here, everyone's already seen it. Maybe even you've seen it multiple times, perhaps. But before we get into it in depth, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. So do comment your thoughts on Book of Boba Fett. As I said, spoilers in the comments. Anything you want to talk about, theories, just chuck them out there. We'll bring them up. We'll talk about them as well, because this is going to be, I think, an interesting episode to speak about. Because it's been a lot of Star Wars fans loving this episode. I'm going to say on what I've seen on Twitter today, a lot more than usual. And it's the sort of non-Star Wars fans, like the casual people, that are starting to struggle. So I'm curious to see what people want to comment about that kind of thing. So do please do that. Hit that like button. Do subscribe. We've got a lot more Boba Fett on the way. Every week, every Wednesday, 10 p.m. GMT, we'll be live discussing these episodes. And of course, there's many other Star Wars things happening this year. We've got Kenobi, we've got Cassian, we've got The Mandalorian. We won't be live every for Bad Batch, but if Bad Batch comes back, there'll be a review probably when it's finished again. So do comment your thoughts and get us on social media. The best way to find out when we're going to do videos, when we're going to go live, that's Twitter at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy, and we have a link to TeePublic in that description below. But as we said, we're here talking the Book of... It's so weird calling Boba Fett, because I don't have a New Zealand accent, but if I did, I would love to shout like "Ear Bubba," like what Django Fett does. Yeah, like that's the best. Like I see so many great gifts. Like that's the one accent I think I've always wished I could do.
Yeah,
I really could. Maybe a bit of South African as well. Have you had any South African Star Wars characters? That's a really good question.
That's a great point. I don't know. No, I don't think so. We need to get the guy from District 9 in there somewhere.
Exactly, that's all I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh god.
Chappie would fit right in with Star Wars, I think, as a droid, right?
Get Diane Woods doing the score as well.
I don't know about that. That might be a step too far. Get them in like a cantina bar or something.
Yeah, just have them in the corner of a cantina. But getting back to Tatooine, as we always are, talking the Book of Boba Fett. Right, really briefly, for anyone that didn't miss it last week, Chris, what was your really initial thoughts on episode Chapter 1? I guess we have to keep going.
I thought it was fine. It was very average for me. It just felt like a lot of what I'd already seen before. We talked about being set on Tatooine again, which you can't really, you can't avoid that, because fundamentally he has to be on Tatooine. That's fine. But it was a lot of, stuff we'd seen before, a lot of on the nose callbacks to things which I'm kind of against now with Star Wars. I'm kind of over it. But I didn't think it was awful. I think we were both in agreement that because it's a story that's told from like two narratives, essentially, you've got the present day stuff and then fill in that sort of 5-year gap, what happened to Boba Fett between, the events of Return of the Jedi through to Mandalorian. That was by far the most interesting part of the story. And I'd even say for episode 2, as like a brief review of it as well, the same goes for this week as well. I think the more interesting, exciting stuff is the flashback stuff. Although I thought there was more in this episode with a certain two huts that might show up, which I thought was interesting and could lead to something good. So I think overall, I definitely preferred Chapter 2 to Chapter 1, though, for sure.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. Actually, there's a really good comparison that I'm not going to take credit for. I saw someone put on Twitter. It reminds me a lot of Arrow. I don't know if you remember season 1 of Arrow, when half of the story was the island and the other half was modern day. Yeah. Obviously, the difference is that we know what happens at the end of the island in this because, he's in the Mandalorian. But that's a really good comparison, obviously, because this is a longer episode. And I think it's definitely benefited from being near an hour this time, because was it 35 minutes last week? That's quite short for a Chapter 1, and you didn't get a lot of time in the past, and you got more time in the past, but probably about 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes in the present, and it was finding its feet. And I think this episode really initially, I think because it was longer, you didn't really get much time in the present still, but what they were able to do in the past, it's starting to build towards this character development now, which is something, as I keep saying, I probably say every week, because I'm not a massive Boba Fett fan. That's what I'm yearning for more than like action set pieces, is just like seeing what they do with him as a character. And it looks like we're getting a little bit more of that. I don't know if you sort of noticed that as well.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot more of the Sand People as well, which we got elements of in Mandalorian season 2, wasn't it? We got more with the Tusken Raiders. He's still not one of my favorite characters, Boba Fett, because he really doesn't have one. I'm not counting the Clone Wars here at this point, like the animated series. I haven't really watched much of that to get an opinion, but he's always just kind of been the badass, hasn't he? And I want to see more from him. And I don't think we're there yet. He is still very much that kind of stoic, badass kind of character, I guess, that just shows up to the action scenes and fights a little bit. But there's a lot of interesting things going on there with the flashbacks and almost like the PTSD visions that he's having. The stuff with him in the back to tank in episode 1, I hope they go into that a little bit more and explain why he has to keep going into that tank. Is that a long-term thing he has to keep doing? But we've still got, 5 episodes after this one, so there's still hopefully a lot of time where they can develop that, and I think they need to if he's the main character. And he's kind of in it on his own in this one pretty much all the way through, isn't it? So he is very much the focus, and I like that they are keeping him the focus. And I like his interaction with the Tusken Raiders first and foremost. I think that's been the strongest thing across both episodes so far.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point with him. I think before we get to Tuskens, let's get the present out of the way quite quickly, because there wasn't really much of it. What, three scenes maybe? Yeah, and this is what I'm quite curious for. So I have a theory. I'm going to say at the end of the episode or when we need to get to it, but I don't know how. Should we start Jabba's palace? That we get the whole Rancor thing.
Yes.
I think it's fair to assume that we knew we were going to get a trapdoor sequence at some point in this show. If the throne's there, it makes sense for it to be done. And it was obvious that there wasn't actually going to be a Rancor there because he was a loyal assassin and all that kind of stuff. I didn't care for that, but again, it's nice to see the trapdoor. It's nice to see the building, the room. I was the meme within me was thinking, like, is the door going to lift? There's going to be like a skeleton or something or anything like that. But we could have even had the Rancor keeper still loyal to this day, trying.
I like, now that the body isn't down there and there's no skeleton, I like to think that the Rancor got a proper send off from the Rancor keeper and like a full state funeral and everything.
Luke picking up Darth Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi would be him to the Rancor,
funeral pyre for the Rancor and everything like that. But I've got a question to you. So obviously there was no monster, and I think we knew it was pretty much going there. But if there had have been a monster, not including a Rancor, which monster would you have liked to have seen? What would be Boba Fett's pet in Jabba's palace now? I'm going to pitch that question to everyone else watching as well.
That's a really
See, I'm thinking the Reek, but I think that Boba Fett would probably want to murder every single Reek that he saw.
I did think this, like, there's got to be some. I was trying to think something poetic to Attack of the Clones. Like, what could there be that's traumatized Boba Fett that he'd want to see all his victims face? But then
it would probably
couldn't really fit
Reek, wouldn't it? Like trampled his dad.
Yeah,
his dad killed one. I don't know.
Yeah, if the Reek kind of hit his dad, his jetpack would have worked. He would have flew away.
There you go.
And then there'd be no Book of Boba Fett, judging off what the PTSD is we keep saying. But oh no, that's a really good question. Let me think on it across tonight.
Okay.
There's bound to be. There's got to be some creature that's a bit funner than. It's too easy to pick Geonosis, isn't it? Let's just say it between us. It's too easy to pick Geonosis.
Or a Raftar or something if you want to tie it into episode 7, God forbid. I mean, they're terrifying. They'll tear you apart. Like, it would get the job done.
Oh god, there's so many bloody wonderful.
I don't know. We'll come back to it.
I kind of want something funny. Maybe like a boar gullet or something, just like lurking
yes,
there.
There you go. That's it.
He'll find out who the assassin is. He tells the truth. So with that, actually, one of my favorite. I mean, I actually really enjoy this, and I think this. I'd say this is a solid episode. I'd say it's consistent. I don't think there are scenes that are greater than others. I think it's a really what I'm about to say, but I really enjoyed the scene. I guess the present day still that the visiting the mayor's office. Like we got obviously the boring interaction, the bar and all this, but we'd seen this mayor in the trailer, and the practical effect looks incredible. I'm going to say that. This is where someone tells me it's CG, but phenomenal. I was worried we were going to get this really boring storyline of, the mayor's going to bump him because we've had that. I'm going to just say I don't like this character. Is it racist? I don't like Americans in Star Wars. That sounds awful, but when it's like, what did we say for Mandalorian? Like SNL comedy, right?
Oh, you mean? Oh, okay. I was going to say
the guy who's
Hamill,
like the mayor,
Harry Fisher.
That sounds awful. Like how like the minor characters, not the fact they were always British, but like the prequels we got Australian,
like guest of the week kind of actors you're talking about.
And
Because I
like
had that
in
with Bill Burr. You know, when Bill Burr showed up in Mandalorian, I was like, oh, for
yeah,
God's sake! But he
it's Bill
actually
Burr in Star
became
Wars.
a really cool character. Yeah.
And this is it. Like obviously because this like Mando shot in America, and we know that Kenobi is shot in America and has an American cast. But it's these really minor roles where they're trying to be funny, and it's not really a criticism of the show. It's more like probably me being snidey than anything. But I've always struggled with that weird, like the whole mayor guy. Like you don't fit into Mos Espa, mate. You're just a geezer that's wearing a wig and painted blue. Like you look like everything I've seen of every single TV show. But then the moment we get into that mayor's room, I was like, yes, an alien. Yes, something a bit different. And I liked this conversation that Bob was trying to suss him out still. And I think that was a very smart way to bring the Hutts in a couple of scenes later because I've got no idea where it's heading. A lot of people keep comparing the show to The Godfather. Obviously, not in terms of quality, but in terms
Oh
of it's a
God, yeah,
crime
yes.
series. And
Get a
I'm
space
kind of,
force's head in a bed somewhere, like one of those things from
yeah,
Episode 9 that they're riding on top of the Star Destroyers with.
like I, I think bringing the Hutts into the best thing they've done, because
Yeah.
they're crime lords, they're gangsters, as Captain Panaka calls them, all this kind of stuff. And because it's not Jabba, we know he's dead. We know Bib Fortuna's dead. I'm curious about what this new storyline is going to be because I just think it makes it interesting. I've got no issue with the Hutts being in it. They've been talked about across Star Wars for so many years, animated shows, whatever. The Hutts are like a syndicate. And it's nice to see more than one. Obviously, not counting Zero the Hutt.
Particular low point of the Star Wars saga, isn't it? Zero the Hutt with his weird droopy voice that he talks in. Yeah, I'm glad he's not there. I've actually Carl's just dropped us a message right there, which I wasn't aware of. The voice of the mayor is actually the director of Boba Fett, Robert Rodriguez.
Smart cameo. I wonder, do you think he has to learn any language for it?
Maybe, who knows?
But
Sorry, just Dave, real quick as well. The two Hutts looked awesome, as did that Wookiee, who is apparently from the Doctor Aphra comics.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably more your forte, George, because I have no idea who Doctor Aphra is, or any of that stuff, or who this Wookiee is. I did a little bit of digging on Google, and it said he was from the Marvel comics or whatever, or the Disney comics that they're doing. No idea.
Yeah, let's talk that scene because I think that was probably. I don't want to say the big scene quite literally, but seeing the Hutts, and this is the first time we've seen them since 1999, I guess we can say, in live action to a point. Let's talk the design before story because we need to chat before we went live. We think it's a blend of CG and puppet because I think it looks phenomenal with something slightly uncanny, but I think that's when they're talking and they're moving. But my favorite moment for all of this is the people that are struggling to carry them. Like, I don't know if I've not seen the episode a second time yet, but when I do, I'm going to be watching that. Like, every time they move, they're all straining their faces. And it's those kind of minor things that I absolutely love about things like Star Wars and like really, really irrelevant characters that absolutely make my day. That imagine going to work one day and they just say, you're going to be carrying two Hutts around on your shoulders. It reminds me of
one,
300.
but two. Like, but yeah, just going back to the mayor really quickly. I forgot the name of that race of aliens. Is it Ithorian or something? I remember them from the animated Clone Wars film that we watched. Not the newer one, like the old TV show one, like the Cartoon Network ones. There was a Jedi one, and they've got like 4 throats or something, and he like sends out a shockwave.
Is it like
they're like the weird kind of bent-headed brown aliens? I think they're Ithorian or Ipthorians. I can't remember the name of them. So just seeing that design again was really, and again, like the practical use of the puppets, maybe enhanced with CGI as well. I've always said, like, I've got a lot of negative things to say on the Star Wars sequel trilogy, but one thing that I am positive about is that it is close to like the original trilogy. There's a lot of CGI in there, but in terms of props, models, costumes, aliens, and stuff like that, they've really nailed the look of it. And I think it probably even more so the TV shows with Mandalorian and continuing in the same vein, Book of Boba Fett. It looks modern, but it's still keeping its foot very much in the original trilogy aesthetic, which I really appreciate about it. And that's the same with the Hutts as well, which was probably my favorite part of the episode. I think that the flashback stuff definitely does dominate the episode, and there's probably more going on there in terms of the drama and everything. But the bit that got the biggest reaction out of me was seeing the Hutts rock up, because I guess maybe it's naive of me to think that, they wouldn't show up at some point during this whole series. It's following the death of Jabba the Hutt. You know, there are more Hutts out there. We know that it's the Hutt clan. There's a whole family of them, a whole, you know, crime family of them. So they probably would show up. And we were talking about this before we went live, but I thought it was for Solo, but you said it was even all the way back during Force Awakens. There was an article that came out or something, a rumor that they'd been building loads of Hutt clan puppets, and we were going to see them. We were going to see loads more of them. I'm wondering if these are left over from that. If that was true, and there's usually, you know, no smoke without fire, there probably is. You know, they probably did build a bunch of them, and I wonder if they've just kind of utilized those that they had left over in a warehouse somewhere and made them work. But I thought that was the best part of the episode, because I'm also interested to see where it's going to go as well. Now that the Hutts are muscling in, and it is that difference between Boba Fett and the Hutts, isn't it? In that Boba Fett will just walk through the street casually. He doesn't need pomp. He doesn't need circumstance. He doesn't need anything like that. But then visually, if you see someone like a king being carried in by this host of people, that, you know, I think they mentioned, was it last episode, that Twi'lek woman was like, "Oh, where's your party? Where's your?" Can't remember what she has a word for it, and I can't remember what she says. So I definitely, that's going to be, you know, that could be a big shakeup there, and like the politics of Tatooine, and are people going to side with the Hutts because that's all they've ever known, that's what they're used to? Will they go more for Boba Fett, who's like this stranger in a strange land kind of thing? And I hope they delve more into that, because, you know, it's cool seeing all the stuff with the sand people and the action scenes there. But the stuff that I really want to see is this drama and this politics and this behind the scenes stuff, because I think at its core, that is the crux of this show. And I think it could go places. You could have a real Game of Thrones type show, in all honesty. You know, these twins have showed up, and I mean, I thought they were a pairing, but they're twins apparently, but they look very close for twins. I will say that. But I want to see, you know, I want to see more of this world and this, you know, underbelly, and even the mayor and that Twi'lek woman from episode 1 as well, who was very interesting. It kind of reminds me of with how she was talking to him and kind of saying, "But you need to be flashy. You need to show this image of power to the people in order to, you know, for them to respect you and everything." It kind of reminded me of Ned Stark going to King's Landing in season 1, and he's, you know, he doesn't want any of that. He doesn't want the bravado. But they're like, "Look, if you want to survive in this world, if you want to do well in this world, you've got to play by this world's rules," kind of thing. And I think if they went more into that, this could be a really complex show. But 2 episodes in so far, it's entertaining. But I do think they are relying on the action and the spectacle of stuff that doesn't really matter. And I want a bit more drama. You know, I want a bit more character stuff.
I'm with you. I think it's really interesting that, you know, they said it's a crime show, but we've not seen it until the Hutts turn up, and it was a really simple line. It's like, you know, you're a bounty hunter, we're crime lords, and there's such a stark difference. And I think the sort of Game of Thrones comparisons are coming quite rife as well now, that, you know, this is someone trying to be someone noble in a, you know, it's like Dark Knight, isn't it? They try to be like decent people in a decent time. I love that kind of dilemma they're going to have, because it's obvious it's going to happen. And so many films, TV shows can do that and make it obvious, fine, but it's about what's going to happen, how will it happen, and what's the story behind it going to be. And I sit here thinking that, you know, we had 15 minutes of the present, 35 minutes of the past, or something along those lines. I think as every episode goes by, that sort of ratio will shorten, and eventually we'll be having like 80% of it modern day, and then the last part of it being the flashbacks that are going to obviously like just tie the story together. And I think this is where the Hutts have come into. I think they're going to be behind a lot of things. I'm still not ruling out that Bib Fortuna credit scene from Mandalorian, which obviously we know got to power. I think that scene's going to be used in this series at some point. And it does make me think as well that this is a show that's going to be, what, five more weeks of airtime. And, you know, one thing I've seen criticized, and this isn't from even the YouTube, this was like actual like Hollywood Report, like legit outlets, and they were moaning that it felt like a chapter, not an episode last week. And I was kind of just dumbfounded, like, well, it's called the Book of Boba Fett. Like,
if anything, the chapter titles make more sense for this series than it does for Mandalorian. Yeah,
because Mandalorian carries over in season 2 as well, and this is what I'm actually really curious about Boba Fett. And I don't mean this to sort of, this isn't me judging the first episode. This is my consensus, and maybe I'll change it in 5 weeks. I really don't want a second season. In the same way that, you know, the highlight of Marvel shows this year has been sort of WandaVision and Hawkeye, you can look at them as a select their own thing. It's like a little mini series for themselves, and then they've moved on. We'll do other things, and I hope Boba Fett falls into that, because I understand they're building this almost like a Star Wars television universe with the Mandalorian. You know, we're getting Ahsoka, that's getting casting underway. Obviously, we've got this. We've got Mando season 3 coming out. Obviously, they thankfully cancelled that god awful Rangers of the Republic name. And I feel like there's going to be a universe set with the TV shows, whilst we're having, like, you know, other people come in to tell stories they want to tell. And, you know, I'm very curious of where Boba Fett's going to fit in this. And I just think bringing the Hutts in just adds some gravitas. And, you know, it just shakes things up. Like, if he had walked out of the building and they'd have been like, "Oh, the mayor didn't send someone to kill you," and the boss says, "Oh, it wasn't me either," you'd be there like, "Oh, okay, here we go. We're just going to get a who done it," and we'll come back next week because we're going to spend 40 minutes of flashbacks. But we got the Hutts. We know straight away they've probably got one of the two people on their back that's going to try and betray him. But we know there's a plan in place now. And that's why I'm curious. I'm curious about where they're going to head with this modern day storyline, because we've not had a lot of it yet. And I think, again, by the end of the 7 episodes, the fact it's 7 episodes is very curious, not because it's an odd number, but how many miniseries tend to be 7? It's such a random number for TV.
Is Mando usually 8 or 9?
8 in Mando. You think British dramas have always been 6, 10 to the bog standard miniseries as well, but 7 is just very peculiar. Netflix used to do their stupid rule of 13.
Well, I was going to say, like, I trust them if they think that, look, we only need 7 episodes to tell this story that we want to tell. We don't want to drag it out. We don't want to pad it out. Then, you know, even with Mando, sometimes we've said there's a lot of filler episodes that you could quite easily just kind of pluck out and remove, and the story would probably be better at a more sort of concise number, I guess. But I trust them at 7. You know, I sort of get in and get out. And I think for something like Boba Fett, you can get away with 7, you know, no matter what story you're telling there with it.
It's a spin-off of a spin-off at the end of the day as well. That's something that I need to reinforce, because I think there are some people, not saying in our comments, but there are some people that think like this is its own thing, like the Mandalorian. I'm not like, this is a spin-off. Like, you need to have, maybe by the end of 7 episodes, you don't need to have seen the Mandalorian, but you kind of still do need to have seen the Mandalorian. So,
but I think when you said that, you know, you hope it's a one and done, I agree with you. It ain't going to be a one and done. You know, but Boba Fett, you know, a character like that, and let's be fair, if they do keep up with like the flashback thing, there's 5 years to plug. We are maybe like a week after he's crawled out of that Sarlacc pit. Right, maybe a couple of weeks after that.
I don't know. Like, I think we could be a couple of months. I might be I mean, I don't really know how time. This is what's actually been a question on my head. How long was he in the Sarlacc pit for? That's my question. Like, just because I don't need them to type at the bottom, like, you know, like a Rogue One type planet's names, and we all moaned because Star Wars doesn't do that. I don't want them to give a date, but I'm curious as to whether we're gonna, you know, the flashback's gonna have him meet Mando in a couple of episodes' time, because where today's episode ended felt like it's like part 1 of a small journey. I don't know if it's actually a good segue to talk about the flashback stuff now, to be fair, but
I guess we can.
I feel like the flashbacks are sort of going to be set in 3. Like, we're having part 1, which is the Tusken Raiders, him learning about them. Part 2 is going to be the search for the Slave One, and part 3 is going to be the search for the armor. I think that's how the flashbacks are going to be staged. And really quickly, I'm going to give my prediction now. I reckon all the Tusken Raiders are going to get massacred and murdered, and it's going to be by like Bib Fortuna. Not him directly, but I think there's going to be, without getting into, because we'll do it shortly, but how I feel his character arc is progressing, they're all going to die. And that's where he's going to have this sense of nobility and want to right the wrongs and stuff like that. I don't know, that sounds a bit extreme after 2 episodes.
I don't know if Bib Fortuna will be the one to do it. I think that would be funny. I do think we need some kind of payoff to Bib Fortuna or some explanation. You know, because I mean, if you haven't seen that stinger at the end of, he survived. I mean, that's huge. I mean, he is at this point, he is the crime lord, or at least he's putting things in place to become the crime lord. You know, the crime boss of Jabba's palace and everything like that. The flashbacks are interesting because I do think that they need a point. You know, it can't just be to plug that question of what happened over those 5 years. I think that the flashbacks have got to filter into the plot in the present. Otherwise, it's just kind of pointless. And I think, you know, thematically, it either needs to make sense or characters from the flashback stuff need to show up. So if the Tusken Raiders don't all die, You know, are they going to show up and come to his aid during some kind of big fight at the end of the present day stuff? I feel like it needs some kind of payoff like that with whatever story it's telling. But not just that, you also have the really in the past flashbacks. We have some stuff on Camino again with this one, where really nice shot actually of sort of young Boba Fett running from the interior of Camino, watching his father go off on a mission or something in the Slave One. So we're getting elements like that too. I think it might be a bit awkward for them to go back and show us some scenes on Camino because, you know, Daniel Logan, everything like that. You wouldn't be able to do it convincingly. I don't exactly. And I know they've used CGI trickery, but I think that's too much CGI trickery, and I kind of hope they don't go there. I'm fine with like a far away, distant shot of him picking up the helmet in the Geonosis arena. We know what's happening. We know which scene it's referring to, but it's just great seeing Camino again. It's every time I see it, I'm just like, oh, I remember when I went to see that in the cinema in 2002 or whenever it came out. So there are a lot of elements at play, certainly, and a lot of story, but I don't think they're going to go for brevity. I don't think they'll cover it all in one season. I think if they've got a reason to continue it, they will do, especially with a character like Boba Fett. I don't know if he's a character that would crop up loads in Mando. I think because he is a fan favorite character and people have been flipping their shit for some Boba Fett content for all these years. I think they're just going to think they're onto a good thing, you know, and they're going to milk it for all it's worth. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I do think he's here to stay for sure.
We're going to get like, I don't want to compare it to Defenders, I'm not seeing it, but you're going to get like whenever the season finale of Mando is going to be, maybe 5 seasons, I'm hoping, but you'll just get this moment like all the TV characters just start coming through portals like Endgame or something to unite them all together for the TV universe against Thrawn. That's the name I'm going to bring up next. There's a lot of predictions. Really quick comment from Carl. I wouldn't even be surprised if flashbacks go back as far as seeing Empire Strikes Back. Love seeing Bob watching Django fly after his next job. Now, that's a very interesting question because I'm not going to comment rumors because, you know, we know Star Wars 99.9% of it is absolutely ridiculous. There's been talk of a lot of people. They think we might get original trilogy era Boba Fett at some point, which I'm very curious about potentially seeing. Obviously, now he's got a different costume. It's even easier to spot when it's going to be the old costume than the new one. But I'm kind of Carl. Like, we've had a fair amount of episode 2. You know, the whole flying off ship Django, because we know family obviously means a lot to him, not like the Vin Diesel meaning of it, but everything comes down to Django obviously getting beheaded, and it does make me wonder. Like, I would love, because I think with Daniel Logan, I think because he's been such a stalwart of like the Star Wars fandom, like convention appearances, like fan clubs, he PR reps for Lucasfilm. He has been a Lucasfilm guy for 20 years. If there was like any corny way to get him a cameo as Boba Fett, even if it's for like 3 seconds, I think he definitely deserves a go with that. Not saying I want a 5-minute action set piece to detract away from the series, but if there's a point in time where they want to go back and do a story between, you know, in the original trilogy, go for it, or even, you know, that gap between 3 and 4, which, you know, is hopefully going to get filled in a little bit more as the years go by. And I think one thing I'm going to say, I think Star Wars has mined everything they possibly can from sort of the last 5 years of that gap, the whole like Rebels era. That's so padded now. It's about exploring that first half of the depression after episode 3, and I think Kenobi and Fallen Order is going to be 2 big things that do that. But
the ultimate question there is as well is if they go that far back and we get some original trilogy stuff, or during the events of New Hope, or just slightly before. You know, Rogue One went out of its way to plug what some people consider a plot hole. It was never a plot hole, but, you know, about the reactor core. It was Galen Erso all along, and, you know, it completely changes the way you see it. And, you know, there are elements because they did that now don't quite make sense. I mean, I really enjoy Rogue One, I do, but there are elements to it that do contradict the canon of A New Hope. Namely, Vader seeing the Tantive 4 fly away, and then all of a sudden she's like lying to his face, like, I'm on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan. He's like, he literally saw your ship fly away.
He knows she's a liar, though. He just knows she's a liar, though.
But, you know, the big rumor as well, like a big question mark, is did Boba Fett kill Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru? You know, when he's like, disintegrations, like this time, no disintegrations. And he's like, as you wish. Like a lot of people have said, was Boba Fett the one that went there and torched them and killed them? So You know, maybe they could ask that question. They could answer that big question mark over A New Hope. Was it the stormtroopers? Because it doesn't seem like a stormtrooper way of killing people.
Never do it again. Never that.
No.
We're going to get Joel Edgerton about Joel. While you're here filming Kenobi, do you mind just quickly popping on some makeup and we can crispy or something? That would be very interesting because I know when I used to read the comics that the way Vader found out Luke was alive was that he sent Boba Fett to Obi-Wan's hut and then he picked up or something. There's a scene there, and that's how Vader found out. But it was Boba Fett he sent to do that. So that could be a plausible theory. I would stick if I was a betting man, which I only do for football because I know it. I'd stick a $5 on Han Solo and Chewbacca popping up. Oh, no. If they wanted to do a cameo, but it would be Alden Ehrenreich Han Solo. I don't think we'll get either. But if you wanted to do an outside, here's a major reveal, here's someone big that had a history with him, that would be the one to do it. I personally don't want to see it. I don't mind, the Huts coming into it, but I'd really like to avoid the main characters as much as possible. Like we're getting a Wookiee now as well, with that bounty hunter one that's from Dr. Aphra. I'm assuming they're going to have a fight at some point because you don't just it's one thing getting comic verification that you're going to make it to a TV show, but when you're literally like a gladiator Wookiee who has already squared off in the distance, he's going to come back and have a fight scene later on. Otherwise, you wouldn't just find someone to play a Wookiee. So that's something I'm curious about. But with the Tusken Raider stuff, this is what I'm curious for. I'm not gonna lie, I kept laughing because the poor Banthas kept getting killed every scene. I don't know if you caught that. It was like every when they were going past the train and sniping them, there was like a Bantha would die, and then the next scene when they went again, the Bantha would die straight away again. And I can just imagine the people that would play online games that just sat there in the back scoping the animals, not the people. But a really cool reference actually to Solo, which was just cocked to my head. The people on the train, I forgot what the type of people are called, but obviously they're the ones from Solo. I know that they're it's not Crimson Dawn, it's one of the gangs, but they are the actual ones seen in Solo. Obviously they reference Kessel, they've got Spice with June coming out. It's I
thought that a lot more.
It's a bit funner. And I'm wondering, could Solo be a plausible one? Again, it's not someone I would like to see. Dave's corrected me, it's the Pikes. That's why.
I really hope we don't see Solo, in all honesty. And that's not just because I really didn't care for the Solo film. I think you have to pick and choose reveals like that. And I think Mando Season 2 was a success. None of us ever thought that was going to happen with Luke Skywalker at the end. And the effects were a little bit dodgy, but I respect what they were trying to do with it. And I respect that more than what the effects were. But there are moments where it is really cringy. Even in Rogue One, when it cuts to 3PO and R2-D2, I'm like, why are these two here? It feels so shoehorned in. And I think in some ways it can do a disservice to sort of like your core characters in your show. It's like, let the characters of, the Book of Boba Fett stand on their own. Let's see more of Boba Fett. Let's see more of, what's her name? Fennec? Is that her name? Because I still don't really have a shred of character for her, in all honesty. She's kind of like a blank slate of a character. Do more for these characters. Let it stand on its own. Don't kind of fall back on hey, you remember Han Solo and Chewie, and kind of bring up that kind of emotion. I don't think it's needed. I really, really don't. We can assume that Boba Fett's had some run-ins with Han Solo at some point in the past, but I don't need it visually all put in front of me. I don't need every single detail, every single infinitesimal thing explained to me. I don't need to see how Han Solo got his name Solo, stuff like that. It's not everything needs to be explained, and I feel that way if they did put Han Solo in here as well. But if they are going for the complete set, tick, you've got the huts, you're going to have Slave One, you're going to have this, you're going to have that, you've got the armor. Han Solo kind of is that other thing if you do want that complete package, I suppose. But I hope we don't see it. I don't think it's necessary.
No, I think that's fair as well, that it isn't necessary for the show. And I just wonder, especially with some of these now, because Luke worked, and this isn't me sort of like defending it, but because Luke worked in Mando, are we going to get things like this a lot more? Kenobi, I don't think Kenobi counts, because if Ahsoka turns up in Kenobi, and this is actually a really good segue, I think Kenobi is going to do a lot of what this show's doing with flashbacks. I don't think we'll get a linear flashback storyline, but I think we're going to get a lot of Clone Wars Kenobi, and I think that's maybe it's more of a hope than anything. But if Ahsoka pops up to me in Kenobi, I'm not surprised. I think that's natural now, given that character's sort of gravitas with people. And if it is a flashback, stuff of Anakin could be flashbacks as well as like present day. I've got no issue with that. But Luke in Mando season 2, I think, because you said it, it worked. And I think by the episode 16, it was earned. I think if anyone popped up in season 1 of Book of Boba Fett, I'd be a bit curious as to at what point is this justified. You can't just say, oh, it's because he's Boba Fett, someone big needs to turn up. At the end of the day, he's just a crime lord on a outer rim planet. Is it really attracting the attention of the kind of like legends of the New Republic or whatever if they had titles post episode 6? And that's where I'm like, again, Mando season 2, Baby Yoda needed an instructor. Luke's a Jedi. Luke's going to be able to train him. Logical sense for Luke to turn up. And if Solo or Chewbacca turns up, he can't just go, my cousin Bill is a bounty hunter, and I'm going to help him take down Boba Fett. Really good combo, Dave. They want to show Solo. I'd rather just see the Falcon. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah,
passing Falcon in the horizon,
like episode 3. When they're flying back into Coruscant and the little Easter egg of it flying out, something like that. If you're looking for it, you'll find it. But if not,
they're the best ones that work. Not everything needs to be paused. But for me, for Star Wars, it's the pausing ones that always work because it never detracts from the story. And really quickly, speaking of flashback stuff, I mean, I don't have much to say in the train sequence. I enjoyed the sequence. It was a fun sequence. I'm not going to sit here and say we've been spoiled, but I did hear that crate dragon sound, and I thought, surely not doing the crate again.
I thought that too.
And I thought, you know what, fair play. It's a decoy. It's for a train. That's a really cool concept that we're not getting basically the worm again, especially after seeing Dune.
And talking about spice as well. It's like,
the whole set, but I like the whole train thing. The image of Tusken Raiders on bikes is something I never thought I'd ever see. It reminded me of something like Mad Max that shouldn't have worked, but it did. But that really cool warrior one, I don't think she's got a name yet. But when she did like the Shang-Chi bus sequence and just like battered everybody like on a long take and then popped her head out of a door, I kind of like seeing Tusken Raiders. And maybe it's because Mando's doing the thing, but I never disliked them when I was a kid. I never liked them. They were just there. Like they were noise you'd make on the playground at school. And like here I am sat, like they've got clans now, like they're getting character arcs now. Like it's so odd that Star Wars has reached that point, and it's a credit to these guys that they really want to develop the Tusken Raiders. But I like what they're doing with them, and the whole, again, not to bring Dune into it, but it's kind of like the Fremen's and Dune, isn't it? It's their land, it was their planet, and I'm curious to see when they're going to get massacred. But sorry to keep rambling, but even the origin of his weapon thing that someone corrected me about last week, I loved getting that stuff. The moment he broke a tree on the branch, all the weird lizard things, it's this really like different thing, which I've seen some people mock the word world building recently because they're on Tatooine, which I kind of get. But when we're learning more about these things that have been around for a while, I think to me it's quite fulfilling. I'm kind of curious to know your thoughts on that as well, that because we've known so little about Sand People for so many years, I don't mind getting a couple more minutes with them, because on TV, that's the kind of platform you have to try and do that, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think, and this was some of my favorite stuff in, episode 1, season 2 of Mandalorian as well, was seeing more of the culture of the Sand People. And, they do explain, and it is, very much true to life as well. And I think there are a lot of comparisons, with the Tusken Raiders to Native American culture, to sort of Middle Eastern culture as well, certainly. In that there are clans that are more brutal, and like Native Americans there are some that are more homely, relaxed, passive, welcoming. And I like that they kind of go into that. You've got the Tusken Raiders that kidnapped Shmi Skywalker, which were really brutal and kind of deserving of a mass slaughter, in all honesty, with what they did. I'm with Anakin's side on that one. We'd all act in that way, of course we would. But then these ones, we see like a whole depth and culture, and almost not religion so much, but how they send him on like a spirit quest to sort of get to know himself, and he has that really trippy vision. They are I'm going to bring up this comment right here. I can do without lizards up noses. It was very strange.
That was weird. Weird.
I don't know if it needed to necessarily be a lizard. I thought that was a bit dumb how they did that. Like maybe if you just like blew that powder in his face, and that was it. And that could be the spice. Again, spice send, you
Nice.
know, giving you all trippy visions for more Dune references. I think that would have worked better. I didn't really need the whole like gecko up the nose type thing. But yeah, when he breaks that branch off and then you see it being constructed, and then he's got, you know, he's doing this whole ceremony with them around the fire at the end. I love all that stuff because it is great, like culture building for this race of aliens that they've always been the antagonists, really, haven't they? You know, even
Yeah.
in A New Hope, they're picking fights with Luke Skywalker, they're kidnapping and doing God knows what, only, you know, God knows what else to Shmi Skywalker.
Phantom Menace, they just turn up to the pod race just to
Yeah,
pot shot a couple of
just
people.
pot shotting people, killing a few people, maybe along the way. Who knows? They're doing all kinds of stuff. So it's nice to get a flip side. One of my favorite Tusken Raiders in this series so far is the Chief. And I don't even think he said a single word, has he? He's just sort of this. I
Hand
love the
gestures.
outfit in like the black robes that he's in with all like this sort of neck piece he's got on. It looks great. I do, going back to the train thing though, I do think it's weird. This is so petty. It's
The train
weird
on
to
the
see a
desert.
train in Star Wars. Yeah. And it was weird in Solo as well. I know what they were trying to do in Solo, and it's kind of the same thing in this one. It's the whole Western thing, isn't it? It's like riding a horse alongside the train, jumping onto the train, decoupling it, you know, robbing something from it, or doing whatever you got to do to it. It's a very classic Western scene and imagery. But this is more so for Solo, to have a train on a track in a world that exists where you have spacecraft that can fly and vertically lift off and take down. If you want something transported, just use a spaceship. Like, why have you got to have a train on a track? They went for the imagery, and I suppose it was a cool action set piece. It was a unique set piece in that film, but it doesn't make much sense within the world to me. This was at least a hover train. I'll give them that. There were no tracks that were needed or anything like that, but it was weird to see a train like that trekking over the deserts of Tatooine. I don't know. What did you think to it?
Yeah, I thought it was. I messaged Dave, who's in the comments after. I was like, I can't help but feel this image I've seen before. He says Solo straight away, and obviously Solo had it. I really like that Solo set piece. But obviously, you get oh god, what's her name? Enfys Nest coming in, all these other characters, and obviously that's a film, right? You can see the budget between film and TV, an absolute masterpiece there. But with this one, I don't know what it was, but I felt like I was. I still think I've seen it before, and I can't tell you what it is. But I think, as you said, it's westerns, right? It's such a common trope of running up alongside, even Bloody
Do it on
Woody
Red
and
Dead
Buzz have done it.
Redemption when you play that. You
Yeah,
do it, yeah.
and it was a very weird image to see in Star Wars, but it kind of worked, and I think that's where I stand. Like, I didn't think it would work, but it did, and they've got me there. And I know that Robert Rodriguez didn't direct this episode, but as every we've only had two, but as every episode passes, you can see why this is the Robert Rodriguez show. That it feels very the sort of thing he likes to do, like stylized westerny type things, gunslinging. Obviously, we had his episode in Mando season 2, but yeah, it was weird. But I think I appreciate it. As long as that I could do that trains and styles for a few more years. I know Solo was fucking hell 5 years ago this year. Christ Almighty!
Oh my god. That's scary, yeah.
We're almost at 10th anniversary to Force Awakens, but I'm trying to recover now. So, no, going off the train stuff, I think this episode, the thing I love, right, and it felt the most Star Warsy of Star Wars. This felt like something George Lucas would be proud of. Was the droid pilot?
Yeah,
I have no idea. I mean, I know exactly what he's doing. He's piloting this train, and it did make me. It made me think of Spider-Man 2. Very different. I think it's because of all the funny faces that Tim and Morrison kept pulling. I was just half expecting him to jump in front of the train and
and
stop it like Tobey Maguire.
Any more bright ideas?
It was going at full speed. It couldn't be stopped and all that kind of stuff. And not a direct comparison, but that's finished in my head now. But just that weird droid that had like 10 arms, like, and he jumped out like the General Grievous crab thing as well, didn't he? Like he was on like all 10 limbs.
Off, didn't he?
Yeah, and I was there like, I love this thing. I want to see more of it. Like he's not the best pilot I've seen in Star Wars last few years. The best thing's still that Muppet character in Episode 9.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. Still one of the absolute highlights of all that film.
And you had to point him out as well. Like I watched I think I only went to see it. No, I went to see it once in the cinema, but I watched it a few times after that, and he never stood out to me. You mentioned him every time I've watched it since, or
you
the
can't
clips
unsee
from
it.
He's the best thing. He's the best thing.
Since the cinema. But no, yeah, he had like a full page in the book. But yeah, this droid train pilot, it's such little things, but that's what Star Wars is like to me. That I don't want to see, a pit droid shoveling coal into a train when it's Star Wars.
Mhm.
Damn right, go build a droid that can do 10 limbs because it makes sense for him to be there, and he was a little snidey one too. So that's
And he's
an
got a
absolute
story to tell now. Like, are we going to see him
yeah.
later on? He's scuttled across the desert. Is he going to get his own book or whatever? Like, I want to know what happened to him after that because he's still out there in the middle of the
He's
desert, in the middle of nowhere.
he's probably got like a name now in the Wikipedia, and there's someone's like currently making a series about him to learn more. Quick comment from Dave: Love Boba robbing them bikers Terminator style. I need Chakotay boots and motorcycles. I love that the Tusken Raiders saw the speeders and just all got their snipers out and were ready to go for him.
Mm.
And it was very, again, going to the weird Star Wars stuff, the whole bar sequence with the guy, like, this ain't right, man. Like, yes, they're aliens, but the whole, like, oh, we're bikers, we're gonna like knee you against the wall and make your wife watch. And it's that American trope stuff I'm saying. And I get why, Star Wars is news TV still, but it still feels weird getting them very earthly things in it. It's not really a criticism, but it feels almost half
It doesn't
real.
feel, yeah. It's too much of our world sort of coming through into there, isn't it? It takes you out of the
It's
immersion a little
literally
like
like these are just blatantly redneck bikers as well. And I know
Mhm.
Star Wars has done stuff like that in the past. You want to comment on real life stuff, but when it's the guy turning around at the bar because he's heard him misspeak too loud, it is that okay. Someone's going to have to come in and save the day, and
Mhm.
it was again another cool action set piece. One thing I really say I'm loving is I know we got a big chunk of it in Mando is the Boba Fett. I know that Tamir Morrison is like I don't know what tribes he's from, but is it like Maori fighting or tribes that he's trained up in? And
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Like,
certainly with the action set pieces, we're seeing that physical combat, which I really enjoy with him. I think that's just something that's making his character far more interesting. And even that Tusken Raiders, they have the weird dance thing as well.
yeah.
But his relationship with the warrior that's training him, I absolutely love.
Yeah, and I like how I mean, Mando is doing this. They communicate with the hand gestures as well. It's just little bits like that. It does feel cool when he's interacting with them and how respected he is with the tribe now and everything like that. There was an element of slight frustration I had with this episode in that it did not to the extent of Mando. Was it season 1, episode 4? Another, a village, a tribe is being
Yeah,
persecuted by an evil tribe, an evil gang. We need to train up and go out and stop them. So there was an elements of that again, and that has been done so to death. Just in fiction in general, that trope has been
Seven
done to
Samurai,
death.
isn't it?
Even before Star Wars, even before these episodes, it's been done to death. But especially within these few series of Mando season 1, season 2, and this one, it's like, are we gonna keep telling these same kind of stories? It didn't feel as bad or as blatant as that one that I mentioned from season 1 of Mando, but if you break it down to the sum of its parts, that is basically what he's doing at the moment, isn't it? So I hope they can sort of move on from that and do something else. But then again, when you've got like a tribe of sand people, it's like, what other story can you tell? Like, how is he going to get out of there? Like, it must be it must be like a really harsh lifestyle out there for the Tusken Raiders being like persecuted, like wars, tribal wars or whatever. So it's got to be something to do with that, I guess. But it does get a bit frustrating when, you keep tuning in and the plot of one of these episodes is just the same thing. And I know Filoni didn't do this one, was it? I think it's Favreau who's had more of a helm on this one, and Filoni's probably going to be
Yeah,
helming
I
more
think
Ahsoka, I would imagine.
I think Flames directed one. Yeah, I think very much without. I mean, I don't know the storyboard, but I feel I don't want to say John Favreau's got the Kevin Feige role because he hasn't, but the way with these TV shows, I feel that I think did Favreau get the writing credit for this episode again, and Robert
Yeah.
Rodriguez got the producer credit. Obviously, like Rodriguez feels like the showrunner. I feel that they're probably being able to tell their own stories, but they've probably got John Favreau, you know, not approving because Lucas has the story group, which is still a thing. But I wonder if there's a bit of this Mandalorian centric thing. Like obviously, Kathleen Kennedy's still like producing all, but we know she's not really doesn't do the story for like for people that don't get her role. She's a producer, not the showrunner. And I feel that with this Mandalorian not, I keep saying cinematic universe. It's not because it's not cinema. It's on TV. With the Disney Plus Mando universe, we'll have to come up with a name. Give it 5
Yeah.
weeks on the name. It won't be as bad as Spump because
Spunk,
Spunk's
I was
only
going to
had.
say we could do better than that, certainly.
But I feel that there is going to be this smaller division within Lucasfilm where you've got maybe Favreau and Filoni working with, Robert Rodriguez, if Bryce Dallas Howard's got episodes. I know there's going to be this pool of the talent, and these are all the ones that are shooting their shows in America as well, not in England. I feel there's going to be some like big movement with each other, and it's kind of cool to see because Star Wars has never had it before. You've always had George Lucas on the throne of power, which is great. And then he's always had, he's had Rick McCallum, he's had Filoni, then we've had Kathleen Kennedy. And it's really interesting that it feels like we're in new territory for Lucasfilm as well as Star Wars. And it's the sensible thing to do. If you're juggling however many shows they've got in production, animated series as well as live action series, there's going to be smaller creative divisions within that. And I know I've gone really off point, but I think it makes it kind of exciting for the future. Knowing we're getting a Mando season 3, I'd be torturous that we'd be waiting another year. But, we've still got a lot of things to plug that gap. Obviously, Cassian's going to be a very different one. But when Cassian comes out, I might be in a situation that, you know what, it's time to go back to the Rogue One world and these characters, which I'm really hoping is good. But the rumors is that that's going to be the longest of the Star Wars shows as well. So I'm very curious. I know I've gone fully off topic. I actually can't remember what we spoke about before this point.
I think it was just, was it like Favreau and like Filoni? Honestly, like whenever I see their names attached, I'm like, they've got my seal of approval. They don't.
It's like Dan and Dave on Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
like before the end,
before the dark times. And don't get me wrong, Favreau and Filoni do put out some stuff that I'm like, oh, that wasn't too great. I think was it episode 5? Was it of season 1 of Mando? I think that was all Filoni, wasn't it? And that was probably the series low point, even out of both.
And I
series,
think they knew it as well, didn't they? Because when they went back there, they didn't do any of that again. Didn't do the same street. It was like, we've got to go over. We've got to go to a new town now. I'm like, yes, that's what you should do.
So, like, don't get me wrong, there are some absolute stinkers, even with them involved. But for the most part, they just seem to get it a lot more. They show us the most sort of like interesting stuff, and they just seem right at home with these characters, with this world, and know how to put it onto the screen and everything and get that across. So, whenever I see their names attached, absolutely. And just talking about the upcoming shows that we've got, I keep saying it. I really am going to have to catch up with Clone Wars and certainly Rebels, I think, before I get to Ahsoka, because so much of that story is going to be continuing on from where that left off. And Cassian, that could be the dark horse. I still think it's the most pointless Star Wars show they've confirmed. I keep forgetting it's a thing every single time, but I don't know, with rumors of certain characters coming back and that era, and we love so much about Rogue One as well. And I think one of the sort of biggest criticisms of Rogue One, and I do kind of agree with this now, the more times that I've watched it and as time's gone by, the characterization is very weak. It's very surface level for a lot of the characters, and I do agree with that. So if we are getting more development for these characters, it's that quality of Star Wars enhancing things that we already know. And I like when they can do that. The Clone Wars TV show fundamentally enhanced stuff about the prequels. And I do think in many ways it helped kind of revitalize the prequels. It fleshed it out a lot more. And now you can look at it as kind of like a respected era of Star Wars and, that period of the history of Star Wars. So I'm hoping we get the same for more of those characters. That kind of stuff is what I want. There's going to be action in there. Absolutely. And this is where I kind of tie it back to Boba Fett and my opinions on this episode. The action's great. We know they can do it. We're in 2022, for God's sake. Disney have all the money. We know it's going to look great. We know they can do action and spectacle. But I do hope the next episode, we've had our sort of like 2-parter almost intro with all this action and fun and adventure. But I want to see us dive more into that character. In the present day stuff, especially, I don't want the flashbacks are important. But I think right now I kind of want the importance to be on the present day stuff, because I think that's where the real meat of the story is. I think they might need to strike a better balance, because so far we're kind of 2 weeks now. And I did like the present day stuff a lot more in this episode than I did episode 1. But there's still this massive difference in terms of the stuff where it feels like the focus of the episode is on, rather than where it should be, in my opinion. But maybe it'll balance out and switch sides as the episodes go on. So I'm curious now. I'm on board with this. Episode 1 came out. I was like, but there's been a lot more introduced in episode 2, the Wookiee as well. I wish I knew more about the character. Maybe I will learn more about the character if I'm just going on he looks cool. He looks awesome. He looks intimidating. So, with the Hutts in there as well and the mayor, and we're seeing more of the internal politics of Tatooine going on. I'm curious now to see where this is going with episode 3, and I hope it's a good episode. Delve a little more into the characters, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of echoing your thoughts that we've hit this point where we're invested in, I'd say, both storylines, but certainly the current day one, it's the current day that should be the priority as an overall. And, hopefully the early episodes have been more of a bias of we're filling in this blank that everyone's asked for years. So we'll quickly not move on, but we'll quickly focus on that and then start to delve elsewhere because, this flashback, what we've had, we've had one arc with the little mini creature. We've had then obviously the train sequence, all that could have been 3 episodes worth of flashback, 20 minutes here, there, and there. But we've had it across 2. So I'm wondering if as an episode goes by, hopefully that gap is needed to be filled a lot less. Because I do think he's going to go on his journey now. Because he's all robed up, he's got the weapon, and we've seen in his vision. I'm very sorry. There's a comment by Carl. He kept showing his original costume. Yes, it did. Which is why I quite like things like that now. Because although I've never been the biggest Boba fan, we now have a distinct visual between what's the current and what's the previous costumes. And I'm very curious to see what else they want to do. Again, maybe they go further back, but what that does show is that they have made the original costume for this series, and it has been used. That he did wear that grey onesie a hell of a lot across the first couple of episodes, though. But that's finally gone with all the weird bullet holes and mangle stuff in it. But no, I think that wraps up everything I can say as well about chapter 2. Again, the Tribes of Tatooine. Great title, by the way, for whoever came up with that at Lucasfilm. Even though
that concept art's still going strong as well when you hit the credits.
Yeah.
I will say real quick, the main theme, the main Book of Boba theme at the end credits, it's growing on me. It's not quite at that level yet, but come episode 3 or 4, I was humming along to it a bit when the credits hit today, so it's getting there. It's getting
very tribal,
point.
And I think that's why it's working. He feels more like a tribesman now. Maybe one of the face of many millions of clones. Who maybe there'll be a reunion down the line. I doubt it though. But no. So Ace, again, thank you to everyone that's been commenting. And if you are watching it on demand, do comment all the replies. Then we do like look at these. And we do have more Boba Fett stuff. Hit that subscribe button. If you want to get notifications when they're going to go up, it is every Wednesday night. But do it anyway for the videos that you might be interested in, because we've got a lot of things happening on the channel. Some things we've announced, some we haven't. It's it's January still. It's very early days, and we've been enjoying our peace and quiet as many people do. But so there will be things to announce. And as always, when we do announce things, social media is also a good place to check us out. Twitter at cinema_savvy, Facebook, letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy, and TeePublic, link in that description below. Chris, there is a review going up tomorrow. We're covering Peter Jackson still, so I'm going to politely hand over, because we've now gone past Lord of the Rings, to the immortal King Kong.
Yes, all 3 hours, 20 minutes of it, which I watched yesterday. So that review's already been pre-recorded as of this live stream. Recorded that last night. That was me and Tate on that one. That will be coming tomorrow at 8 p.m. GMT. It was a fun film to go back and revisit. Incredibly long one. We didn't talk as long as the film, though, on it. I think it's a little over an hour review, but it was a really good discussion on it, with some interesting opinions sort of back and forth on that. Good discussion piece. It's been the most turbulent and weirdest retrospective on the channel so far, certainly. I think it's still called Peter Jackson Month. I think it's a retrospective that's probably been going on for about 3 months now, give or take a little bit. I think it started in the back end of November. Obviously week to week, Lord of the Rings got its own month, and now we're kind of finishing it off a little bit. So we've got King Kong, and then the following week, Thursday, the 13th of January is going to be the Lovely Bones. And that'll be it for a while for the Peter Jackson retrospective. I know he did do a Hobbit trilogy, but there is a certain anniversary of a certain Hobbit film coming out later in the year. So you might see us talk about that just then. So it's going to be a very weird retrospective overall, but it's been fun to talk about, been fun to revisit. And as a tease of things to come, might be some more retrospectives for the future, and I'm gonna leave that there for now. Food for thought.
No, absolutely. I don't want to give any teasers away. I've not changed up any posters behind me, so there's no clues there. But there's some anniversaries this year. There's a lot of things happening. There's more Disney Plus shows. There's more Marvel films. The good news for everyone is that we won't be seeing Morbius on January the 20th. We've been spared. We've been spared another few months of pain for that.
Would you miss it?
As you said,
would you miss it?
The sad thing, what makes it sad is that I really want to watch it out of curiosity to see how bad it is. Like I've got these Venom 2 vibes going.
If there's meme material in there, it could be so bad it's good.
Out on
I
April
really hope
Fool's
it is.
Day. It's now coming out on April Fool's Day, and I don't think Joe Letter could have picked a better day And we will get an interview where he admits drinking blood to get in character, and I'll be disgusted if we don't get that. So, yeah, everyone, you're just mocking future releases. But, you know, as I said, hit social media. There will be things announced. There might be videos announced that we don't know we're doing yet. Anything could happen in the next couple of days. Who knows? Maybe Disney will buy Harry Potter rights, which would be the ultimate plot twist. But if there is something that major, we'll have videos. So, once again, thank you to everybody for commenting, watching at home, and we'll be sure to see you on the next one. Take care.
See ya.